Wabi Sabi Garden Oasis, cozy small backyard, nature-inspired outdoor living. In today's world of relentless speed and digital immersion, I see an urgent need for sanctuaries that restore balance, places where people can step away from the artificial glow of screens and reconnect with something elemental. As an architect, I design not only structures, but experiences. And I believe that the most transformative experiences often happen outdoors, in spaces that remind us of the quiet truths of nature. My philosophy in these designs is deeply inspired by Wabi Sabi, the Japanese tradition of finding beauty in imperfection, of embracing the transient, and of celebrating simplicity. When I speak of Wabi Sabi Outdoor Living, I do not mean spaces filled with flawless lines or sterile perfection. Instead, I envision gardens and backyards that breathe with authenticity. Here, a weathered bench carries the story of years gone by. A moss-covered stone is not an obstacle, but a treasure that grounds us in the continuity of nature. Even a clay pot with a chip along its edge becomes a testament to resilience and time, an object that has endured and therefore deserves admiration. In this way, the garden evolves into a living memory where every element speaks to the beauty of change. The pathway in such a retreat is not a polished trail of uniform stones, but an irregular, slightly uneven course that invites discovery. Each step, each curve, each imperfection underfoot connects us to the land, reminding us that nature is never perfectly symmetrical, yet always profoundly balanced. Is this balance that I seek to capture in design, one that values the poetry of the raw and the unfinished. Plants form the living soul of a Wabi Sabi garden. I prefer to use species that belong to the land itself, native and seasonal plants that thrive without excessive control. Wild grasses swaying with the breeze, delicate ferns unfolding in shaded corners, or moss spreading quietly over damp earth, these elements embody nature's slow artistry. A single bonsai, pruned with care, or a small grove of bamboo rising in rhythm becomes a focal point of contemplation. Even a patch of wildflowers blooming unpredictably can serve as a reminder that true beauty is not imposed but allowed to flourish naturally. This garden does not remain static. It changes with the seasons, with the rain, with the quiet passing of years. Leaves turn from green to amber, moss thickens on the stones, blossoms appear and fade, all of it a reflection of impermanence, and yet all of it profoundly moving. To me, this cycle is not a flaw, but the essence of Wabi Sabi, the acceptance of time as a partner in design. Lighting in such a space must also follow this principle. I avoid harsh, glaring fixtures that flatten the textures of the garden. Instead, I favour a softer touch, a lantern with a warm glow, a few candles scattered among stones, or a string of delicate lights suspended across a pergola. The intention is not to overpower, but to create intimacy, to sculpt shadows as much as light. When dusk falls and these subtle illuminations come alive, the garden transforms into an intimate retreat, a place for reflection, quiet conversation, or simply the joy of watching night settle gently. Furniture here is never meant to dominate. A wooden bench softened by age, a stone stool carved by time, or a low table made from reclaimed timber fits seamlessly into the surroundings. Each piece carries a story, often imperfect, yet purposeful. The idea is not to crowd the space with objects, but to let each one breathe, each one find its place in the quiet harmony of the garden. A bench that doubles as storage, or a planter that offers both greenery and a seat, speaks not only to function, but to thoughtful restraint. For me, the true genius of Wabi Sabi lies in its respect for the passage of time. Rust forming on a lantern, cracks deepening on terracotta, or the gentle fading of wood under the sun. These are not blemishes, but marks of life lived. They remind us that nothing remains unchanged, and in that change lies beauty. The garden itself becomes a mirror of our own lives, not perfect, not permanent, but filled with meaning because of its imperfection. In such an outdoor retreat, the garden ceases to be just a background, it becomes a way of life. One may enjoy morning coffee here, listening to birdsong as light filters through bamboo leaves. In the afternoon, it becomes a quiet nook for reading, a space for meditation, or even a gathering spot with friends beneath a canopy of soft lights. Each activity is enriched by the natural atmosphere, each moment an invitation to slow down and notice details we often ignore. The rough texture of stone beneath a hand, the subtle fragrance of wildflowers, the rustling of grasses in the evening wind. This is what Wabi Sabi offers us in design, not a display of wealth or perfection, but a reminder of what it means to live well. It tells us that luxury is not found in excess, but in the authenticity of the present moment. It teaches that peace is not something we buy, but something we cultivate, by aligning our surroundings with the rhythms of nature and the acceptance of imperfection. Through Wabi Sabi Outdoor Living, I transform even the smallest gardens into sanctuaries, not by adding more, but by allowing less to speak more deeply. A small backyard, when designed with these principles, becomes a timeless retreat for the soul, a place where imperfection is no longer something to correct, but something to honor. And in this space, one finds not only beauty, but meaning. When I begin to shape the second layer of a Wabi Sabi outdoor retreat, I think of rhythm, the gentle rhythm of elements speaking to one another, not in competition, but in dialogue. As an architect, I do not see my role as imposing form upon nature. Rather, I seek to guide, to frame, to reveal. A small garden or backyard becomes a canvas where light, texture, sound, and time compose an ever-shifting masterpiece. What fascinates me about Wabi Sabi design is that it resists completion. It is always in process, always evolving, always holding space for what time will bring. Take, for example, the textures we invite into the space. Weathered wood, rough stone, woven bamboo, and clay surfaces do not merely serve as materials, they are storytellers. Each scar, each line, each imperfection has a voice that speaks of endurance. When we run our hand along an old wooden bench, we feel the grain raised by sun and rain. When we step onto stones softened by moss, we sense the quiet persistence of nature. These surfaces remind us that beauty is not the absence of marks, but the presence of memory. In the planting of a Wabi Sabi garden, I resist the urge to design too tightly. Instead, I leave room for spontaneity. I allow wild grasses to lean in directions they choose, ferns to spread into corners with gentle insistence, vines to climb as they please. This is a philosophy of trust, trusting nature to participate in design. While I may frame the garden with structural elements, I never seek to dominate it. The charm lies in unpredictability, in the way a wildflower blooms suddenly in an unexpected corner, or how moss quietly carpets a shaded rock without invitation. These small surprises are what breathe life into the retreat. A central plant often becomes the quiet anchor of the space. It may be a bonsai, shaped through years of patience, its twisted form embodying both fragility and strength. Or it may be bamboo, standing tall and whispering with the wind, evoking both stillness and movement. These living sculptures are not chosen for grandeur, but for their ability to express character. Around them, supporting plants weave layers of texture and seasonality, reminding us that nothing here is fixed. Leaves will fall, blossoms will fade, and new growth will appear. In this acceptance of impermanence lies the essence of Wabi Sabi. Water, when introduced carefully, becomes another vital voice. A simple basin of stone where rainwater collects invites reflection. A small fountain, understated and quiet, offers the sound of flowing water, steady, calm, meditative. In the presence of water, the garden becomes more than visual. It becomes auditory, tactile, and alive. The sound mingles with the rustle of leaves, the call of birds, the hum of evening insects, forming a natural symphony. This is architecture not just of space, but of atmosphere. Lighting in this second layer must be orchestrated with equal subtlety. I imagine lanterns placed low to the ground, guiding steps with soft halos of light. A single candle on a stone table, its flame flickering, creates intimacy where words can be whispered. Solar lights hidden among foliage illuminate textures, casting shadows that dance and shift as the evening deepens. Light here is not about brilliance, but about nuance. It does not erase darkness, but partners with it, reminding us that contrast itself is beautiful. Furniture continues to echo this philosophy of restraint and authenticity. A wooden bench might stand beneath bamboo, offering a seat that is both functional and contemplative. A stone stool may rest near a water basin, its surface cool beneath the hand, waiting to host quiet moments of pause. Low tables carved from reclaimed timber invite gatherings that are simple, honest, unpretentious. Each piece, weathered by time, blends seamlessly into the landscape, as if it had always belonged there. What I find remarkable about Wabi Sabi design is its invitation to slow down. We live in a culture that constantly seeks the new, the flawless, the immediate. Yet in the quiet of a small backyard shaped by this philosophy, one learns to linger. One notices the fine crack along the side of a clay pot, the way morning light filters through bamboo leaves, the delicate shadow of a vine cast against a stone wall. These moments are small, almost invisible to the hurried eye, but they are transformative. They teach us to see differently, to value what is often overlooked. In this second unfolding of the garden, the role of imperfection becomes even clearer. Rust upon a lantern is not a blemish, but a patina of history. Uneven stones underfoot do not signal neglect, but authenticity. Wood that fades to grey with time speaks of resilience, of harmony with the elements. Each mark of aging ties the garden to the passage of life itself. Rather than resisting this change, the Wabi Sabi retreat embraces it, allowing the space to grow old with dignity and grace. This outdoor sanctuary becomes not only a place of relaxation, but a mirror for the soul. To sit in such a space is to be reminded of our own impermanence, our own imperfections, and yet our own beauty within them. It is a space that does not demand but invites. It does not overwhelm but gently holds. It does not seek to impress but to comfort. And in that quiet comfort, we find renewal. To me, this is architecture at its highest form. Not the pursuit of grandeur, but the creation of environments that foster reflection, humility, and gratitude. By weaving together simple materials, native plants, gentle lighting, and the acceptance of time's hand, we create not just a garden, but a philosophy made visible. It is a way of living that acknowledges the truth we often avoid. Nothing lasts, nothing is perfect, and nothing is complete. Yet in this truth there is serenity. Thus, as I shape this second part of the vision, I see not just a garden, but a dialogue between humanity and nature, a conversation where the designer does not dominate but collaborates, where the garden itself becomes the teacher. It shows us that even in small, humble spaces, one can find vastness of peace, of meaning, of connection. And in this vastness, life feels both simple and profound. When I arrive at the final layer of a Wabi Sabi outdoor retreat, I see it not as completion, but as continuation. A space that carries forward the dialogue between people, nature, and time. This third unfolding of design is about how the garden is lived in, how it shapes daily rituals, and how it nurtures the human spirit in the most subtle yet profound ways. For me, a well-conceived Wabi Sabi backyard is not just an aesthetic arrangement, but a living philosophy, a way of being present in a world that is often restless and distracted. In this stage, I imagine how the garden receives its inhabitants each day. In the early morning, as sunlight begins to filter through leaves, the air feels still and contemplative. A person stepping outside with a cup of tea or coffee finds not just a place to sit, but a space that responds. The soft creak of a wooden bench beneath them, the coolness of stone beneath bare feet, the scent of dew on moss. These sensory impressions weave together to create an atmosphere of grounding. This is where the philosophy proves itself, not in grand gestures, but in ordinary daily rituals made extraordinary through awareness. The garden also becomes a space of dialogue between solitude and companionship. Alone, it is a refuge for meditation, reading, or quiet thought. The irregular path invites slow pacing, the textures invite touch, the shadows invite observation. But when shared under the glow of lanterns or beneath the whispering bamboo, it becomes an intimate place of connection. Friends gather around a low table, their laughter softened by the textures of stone and wood. Conversations unfold without haste, carried by the gentle presence of the garden itself. Here, design becomes invisible. It does not impose, but it supports, creating a framework for human experience that feels timeless. I see the passage of seasons as one of the most important collaborators in this final expression of design. In spring, the garden is alive with blossoms and fresh green. In summer, it offers shade and warmth. In autumn, it glows with deep colours. And in winter, it pares itself back to essentials, bones and textures revealed in silence. Each season is not resisted, but welcomed. Even decay is honoured. Fallen leaves left to gather in corners, frost forming delicate patterns on stone or bamboo swaying against a grey sky. All of these are embraced as part of the story. The garden reminds us gently that life is always in motion, that we too are part of this impermanence. The materiality of the space continues to shift with time, and this change is essential. Wood weathers into silvery tones, stones darken with rain, metal acquires rust, clay pots fracture slightly with years. These transformations enrich the garden rather than diminish it. I design with the awareness that nothing here is static. Instead, the space grows more beautiful as it ages. This is a radical departure from conventional design, which often seeks to freeze perfection in place. Wabi Sabi teaches us instead to let go, to allow time to shape the work, to welcome imperfection as evidence of life itself. In furnishing the space, I emphasize restraint. A single bench, a stone seat, or a reclaimed table is enough. These objects, humble yet intentional, do not crowd the garden but serve as gentle anchors. They exist to be used but also to be appreciated for their quiet honesty. A crack in the wood, a stain on the surface, a curve worn smooth by touch, all of these details add layers of intimacy between human and object. It is through such contact that we come to value the authenticity of the materials and the honesty of their imperfections. Lighting at this stage becomes more than functional, it becomes ritual. The act of lighting a lantern at dusk, of watching shadows stretch across uneven stones, of seeing the warm glow flicker against weathered wood, turns evening into ceremony. Light here is not about clarity, but about mood, not about dominance, but about subtlety. It invites stillness, reflection, and intimacy. The garden is transformed into an evening sanctuary where silence feels full rather than empty, and where time seems to slow. For me, the true power of a Wabi Sabi outdoor retreat lies in how it shapes our perception of beauty. It dismantles the illusion that beauty requires perfection, grandeur, or control. Instead, it teaches us to find beauty in the fleeting, the humble, the unrefined. The curve of a vine, the texture of stone, the sound of water trickling softly, all become revelations when approached with attention. This shift in perception extends beyond the garden into life itself, altering the way we see our homes, our relationships, and even ourselves. The small backyard, often overlooked or underestimated, becomes a profound teacher. It shows us that space need not be large to be meaningful. What matters is the intention, the openness to imperfection, the respect for natural rhythm. Even in the heart of a busy city, a modest corner can be shaped into a sanctuary where one feels transported into another dimension, a space of peace, authenticity, and timelessness. In closing my reflection on this philosophy, I do not see the garden as a finished product, but as a living process. It is a process of collaboration between designer and nature, between inhabitant and time, between imperfection and acceptance. Each crack, each rusted edge, each faded leaf becomes part of a greater story. And it is in that story that we rediscover what it means to live fully. Wabi Sabi Outdoor Living is not merely about design, it is about cultivating a way of life that values presence over perfection, humility over excess, and authenticity over appearance. It calls us to slow down, to look closely, to honor what is real and imperfect and alive. In doing so, it transforms not just the garden, but the person who inhabits it. And in this transformation, a simple backyard becomes a timeless retreat for the soul, a reminder that true luxury is found in simplicity, and that true beauty lies in the graceful acceptance of imperfection.